Hello guys. Welcome to our channel. This is a tutorial series for RPA development using UiPath. In our recent tutorials, we saw how to automate desktop and web applications. In this tutorial we will look into few miscellaneous activities like invoke method, get attributes, retry scope, etc. Let's begin. Launch UiPath Studio. We have upgraded our studio to 2018.4 version. The new version has some changes in layout. Home page has better categorization of workflow templates. Now Team Explorer can be used without opening any project, and it continue to support TFS and SVN as usual. UI Explorer can be used without opening any project, and browser extensions are also moved to the Tools menu. Settings tab has language selection and theme selection available. Let's create a blank project and name it Activities Guide. We will see use of invoke method activity. We will create a list variable and try to add values to it. Let us drag a sequence. Create a variable of type string of list and name it list names. Initialize newly created list variable. We will try to add a new value to list using add method. It shows an error that this method does not produce any value, so we can use it in assign activity. We will use invoke method activity here. We will ask user to enter a value which we will add to list. We will also ask user to provide a choice if he or she wants to continue. We will repeat these steps until user enters no. To do so, let us drag a dual activity. Use an input dialog to get user's choice and store it in a variable choice. If user enters Y, bot should ask for another entry to be added, else it will end the loop. Use an input dialog to get entry to be added by user and stored in a variable name. To add the value entered by user into list, drag the invoke method activity. Provide list name in target object field and provide method name add to method field. Value to be added should be passed as an input parameter. Let us have a look at the workflow we have created. Click Run to execute. Yes, it is working as expected, however we are not sure if it has added values to list. We will use one for each activity and iterate through the list variable to check values added. Click Run to execute. Yes, it is adding values and we are able to access those values. In a similar way, invoke method can be used to a variety of object types to invoke a particular method supported by object. The activities we will look into now is reading an Excel worksheet into a data table variable and printing the values to console as plain text. Create an Excel workbook and add some data to it. Drag an Excel application scope activity and provide the path to workbook. Select appropriate settings. We will use a read range activity inside Excel application scope to read values from worksheet. Check Add Headers checkbox. Create a variable of type data table and give name as DT source. We will upgrade its scope to output data table sequence to use it outside Excel application scope. Drag an output data table activity. Provide data table variable as input and a string variable to output. Click Run to execute. The values from worksheet were saved into data table variable and printed to console as plain text. Output data table activity is very useful to convert data table values as plain text. However, it should be used with caution when working with large data tables. We have two workflows in our project, main.xml and output data table.xml, but at a time only one workflow executes. We will see how we can invoke one workflow from another. To call a workflow, invoke workflow file activity is used. It can be dragged and dropped from activities pane and fed with values, or a workflow file from project pane can be dragged directly to workflow. Clicking on Import Arguments will import all arguments declared in target workflow. Let us create few input and output arguments in output data table workflow. Create an argument of type string and name it in _workbook path, keep direction as in. Create another out argument of type string and name it out_text, change direction to out. Replace workbook path in Excel application scope and output of output data table activity with arguments. Also remove write line activity. Go to main workflow and click on Import Arguments, give workbook path to in_workbook path and create a string variable text source and assign to out_text. Click OK. Use write line to print value of text source. Save the workflow and click Run to execute. This time, execution started with main workflow and the output data table workflow also got executed at the point where we had placed invoke workflow file activity, and eventually execution ended with writing worksheet values to console. It is a best design practice to create small components and invoking them in workflows. It helps in development, testing and debugging of components as well as maintenance of project. Now we will look into retry scope, get attribute and take screenshot activities. Create a new sequence and name it retry scope. We will open a web page and check if a checkbox is checked or unchecked. Drag an open browser activity and provide URL. Use get attribute activity and indicate UI element on screen. Get attribute activity provides a variety of attributes of UI element. We will use checked attribute and store result in status. Put a message box to print value of status. Click Run to execute. Put a delay before get attribute activity and execute. This time we will uncheck the checkbox manually. Bot has identified the status of checkbox. In automation, sometimes bot fails to perform an action due to some technical exception. In such cases, the actions can be retried using retry scope activity. It can also be used when retry is required until a specific condition meets. Of course, it provides an option to choose max number of retries. Drag a retry scope activity and put open browser inside action block. We will keep max number of retries 3 and interval between retries as 5 seconds. Click Run to execute. Close the browser manually, which will cause bot to fail to check status of the checkbox due to unavailability of UI element, and it will throw an exception. Bot has retried and opened browser again. Let's close it again. Bot has retried and performed action successfully. Retry scope is very useful to recover from errors. We will now see take screenshot activity. It can take a screenshot of what is being displayed on screen. Drag a take screenshot activity, create an image variable and assign it to output. In order to be able to view the screenshot, it needs to be saved on storage. Drag a save image activity, provide image variable and storage path as inputs. We are using timestamp as file name to keep it unique for each execution. File name should end with extension .png. Click Run to execute. Bot has successfully saved screenshot. It is very useful to take a snapshot of screen when exception occurs. It helps in identifying reason of failure. We will look into more activities as we will go through other tutorials. Thank you. See ya.